The story of Cain is known by many, the first son of Adam and Eve, who committed the first murder in history by killing his brother Abel. But there's something in this story that is rarely mentioned, something that has remained in the shadows of the scriptures, something that you probably were never told. Did you know that Cain, the murderer, had a wife? And not only that, the story of this woman, Cain's wife, is surrounded by mystery, unanswered questions, and deep biblical implications that could change the way you view the early narratives of Genesis. This is the story the Bible never told you, Cain's wife. The Bible briefly mentions Cain's wife in the book of Genesis, but it doesn't provide details about her identity. It doesn't say where she came from or how she became Cain's wife. It only tells us that after Cain killed Abel and was marked by God, he went away and founded a city, and at that moment, we find out that Cain knew his wife. But who was she? Where did she come from? How could she have been so important to be mentioned in such a crucial story? Yet without further details, this is where the speculation begins. Some scholars have suggested that Cain's wife could have been his sister, as in the early days of humanity, humans had no other choice but to marry each other to continue the species. Although the Bible doesn't explicitly mention it, some believe that this scenario is plausible since at that time, laws against incest did not exist, and it was common for brothers and sisters to marry to propagate humanity. However, this is just a theory, and not everyone agrees with it. The truth is that the identity of Cain's wife is not only a historical mystery but also a theological topic. Some suggest that the fact that no further details are given about her might have a deeper purpose. After all, Cain is a man marked by sin, the first man to commit murder. So, is Cain's wife simply a secondary figure in the story, or does she have a more significant role than we realize? Throughout history, various interpretations and theories about Cain's wife have emerged. Some believe that her silence in the biblical narrative could symbolize Cain's isolation. After his sin, Cain was rejected by God and marked, condemned to wander the earth. In that sense, his wife could represent the only link he still had with humanity, the only piece of normalcy in a life full of chaos and condemnation. Was she simply a victim of circumstances, a character whose only fate was to be Cain's wife, a man marked by sin? There are those who wonder whether Cain's wife had any knowledge or compassion about the terrible act her husband had committed. Did she know that Cain had killed Abel? How could she, in her time, live with a man marked by such a horrible act? Was her life a condemnation she shared with him, or was she also, in some way, trapped in the fate that God had set for Cain? Although the Bible doesn't provide definitive answers, some scholars suggest that she might have played a much more significant role in the biblical narrative. If we analyze the texts in more detail, there are some clues that could help us uncover the importance of Cain's wife. Remember that after Cain killed Abel, God gave him a sign to protect him from being killed by others. This sign could have been a way to mark him and prevent Cain from paying for his sin. But it could also have symbolized the burden of living with his sin and its consequences. Perhaps Cain's wife, by being by his side, also lived with that burden, being the only person with whom Cain could share his pain and his struggle for redemption. Was she the only witness to his torment, or, on the contrary, his support and refuge? The lack of details about her in the Bible doesn't mean that she didn't play a role in the story, but rather that maybe her role is deeper and more spiritual than we can imagine. The mystery of Cain's wife invites us to reflect on many things. The narrative of Cain and Abel is one of the first stories in the Bible to talk about envy, sin, and consequences. But at the same time, it leaves us with unanswered questions, shadows of characters who, despite their importance, never became fully understood or explained. What if Cain's wife had a story of her own to tell? Perhaps her story is a reflection of the struggle of all humans in a world marked by sin and condemnation. Maybe her silence is a manifestation of the loneliness and guilt that we all share when facing our own faults. Perhaps the lack of details about her is an invitation for each of us, as we read the Bible, to put ourselves in her place and reflect on human suffering, forgiveness, and redemption. In the end, Cain's wife is much more than a hidden character in the biblical story. She is a symbol of what it means to live in a world marked by sin and the consequences of our actions. Her story, though hidden, is full of lessons that we can all learn from, lessons about the importance of compassion, forgiveness, and understanding in a world so filled with darkness. What is clear is that, like Cain, we all face the consequences of our actions, and Cain's wife can serve as a reminder that, even in the darkest moments of history, there is space for reflection, learning, and growth. The Bible may not have told us all the details about Cain's wife, but her story, in silence, remains a powerful lesson.